I think the computer is a new medium, so one's got sculpture, painting, and printmaking. Now there's this new category, computer art, and it gives techniques to the artists which could not be achieved using traditional fine art techniques. And really, this is a very new genre, so that a kind of a history is just beginning to form now.
The technology we were using in those days was very crude. When you compare it to the modern workstations we have access today, our computer was a large mainframe computer on a false floor, air conditioning, and all the pictures were drawn onto pieces of plastic or pieces of paper, and those images were taking 10 minutes, 15 minutes each to produce, and it was weekends and days of work just to get a few seconds of animation that you couldn't see. It had to be taken away, filmed, and then a week later someone would come back and say, this is no good, and you would start all over again. So it was rather crude.
They were just coming into the market, the very first film plotters. This is a device that you could record computer graphic images straight onto film. And we ordered one of these from the States. I think it was the second one they'd ever made. And of course, you know, it came and it didn't work. So we had to debug that thing. I had to build an interface for it and write software for it. And ultimately actually fix some bugs in the machine itself. Then we discovered that the computers we were using weren't fast enough. So we had to go out and get another computer. And it took in all like 6 months of continuous work. Paul and I used to work 24 hours a day. One of us would be sleeping and the other one would be working, and we'd wake each other up and keep going. We did that for 6 months solid.
MX, a new tire from Michelin. MX for even better cornering, even better braking, and the long, long life you expect from Michelin. MX, an even better.
We were quite innocent, you know, exhausted apart from anything else. Hadn't been out for 6 months, hadn't seen daylight. But and eventually, you know, people found out who we were, and we did some more things. But yeah, it was a classic. It was much too ambitious, really.
The complexity of the image was limited. There was a limit to how many complicated objects you could keep running at any given time before the computer sort of rolled over on its back and started smoking. You know, that sort of thing. That's sort of on the machinery end. On the software end, there wasn't much software for generating or creating complex objects. By complex, I mean natural objects, that sort of thing. You know, trees, grass, water. In fact, a lot of it we had to write ourselves over the last 8 years because it really wasn't commercially available. That's sort of changing now. But physical phenomena that wasn't geometric tended to be, oh my God, I'm going to be up all night sort of thing.
A lot of the images do seem rather simple and crude today, but in those days, to have a series of blocks, I mean, I was always very impressed with the Channel 4 logo. I mean, it was a landmark. When you see it in the context of what was possible in those days, to see blocks of colour with shadows drawn across them and highlights, it was a magnificent piece of animation. And we had to go through this phase of seeing logos.
And both the Channel 4 and the commercial that we did were good influences on the development of computer graphics, because the only place that money was available to pursue this research, and it was research in those days, because you had to be prepared to write the programs and often build hardware to record the images. And the money was not available in the universities, and there was just generally no interest in it. And it wasn't until, you know, the advertising industry really woke up to the fact that, you know, here was a whole new way of producing synthetic images that had a, you know, a quality and a charm that the money became available to develop.
The advertising people who had the budgets had the sort of daring to try out the new medium because it was new. They're always looking for new ways of promoting their products, I guess.
How can chocolate be pink and green and purple and yellow and red? What makes the body?
How many tubes does it take to go round the underground?
Which came first?
Chocolate of the colour.
When is the hour? Too red.
People hadn't done a complete commercial using 3D computer graphics in such a sort of designer way. There was about 10 scenes in it all together, I believe, and each one took about a week to actually work through, set up all the choreography, colour and light it, get it all approved.
People had seen computer graphics. People knew that there was a lot of graphics in television, in titles, in commercials, but I think that it really was the mid-80s before people became consciously aware of computer graphics as a medium. When we first saw Money for Nothing, the Dire Straits video, I think the thing that sprung into my mind was an outrage that somebody had produced so much quantity of computer graphics. It wasn't the computer graphics itself that actually sent me back on my heels. It was the sheer quantity of the stuff.
I don't think the animation was particularly good. I mean, it was very good at the time. There wasn't a lot of character animation involved. You know. But what was good about it was all the characters were very well designed. They were well designed to fit the medium. At that stage, computer graphics was very chunky and primary colors. People actually took a lot of trouble to design the characters for the equipment and to make a virtue of a necessity. Whereas these days we're in a position where we can achieve realism, visual realism, and people are expecting good character animation as well. We're in an area where we can substitute for other methods. We no longer have to tailor the design to the machinery so much. We're at a point we can challenge reality.
The big breakthrough was sometime, again, mid-80s, 85, 86, when the technology changed very, very quickly from being one where you sat in front of a non-interactive text editor, thinking inside your head of the animation, envisaging it within your imagination, and then typing commands into the machine and hoping that what you saw in your head would actually come out on the screen. Almost overnight, that was changed when a whole generation of interactive computer graphics systems became available.
You could work out your choreography and see what's going to happen to it before you shot it or recorded it or got it out of the computer, which was a great help. You can imagine from not seeing anything till you got the finished rushes back to actually seeing something in front of you. It was brilliant.
Who's the smartest smarty? Who's got what it takes to make it to the top? Will it be pink, or red, or yellow, or green? Will they be fazed by the maze? Will they fall foul of the milk crocodiles? Make it snappy. Who's got...
We had to fill up a pond that had to have the thickness and consistency of chocolate, but it still had to have crocodiles in it that moved in a way that crocodiles would. If a Smartie jumped on them, which moving the crocodiles, I still remember, I've got notes in my books about 3 days of trial and error, and finally I found out how crocodiles move, and it was like eureka to me, just to get them to move.
Although seen in isolation, the computer animation has most of the trappings of reality. At the end of the day, it's a fake. You know, it's colored squares all stuck together, and you know, if you get enough colored squares, you believe that it's semi-real. But if you stick it beside a real object, you can start to see the problems. So we've addressed quite a few of them at Electric Image, but there's still limits to what you can simulate. You know, simulating of a real sort of moving human being is quite a long ways off.
There is no reason why computer graphics should produce photorealistic images. None at all. It's primarily a function of what people perceive computer graphics can produce. Period, full stop, that's it. There is no reason why it should produce photorealistic images.
It's a useful goal for computer graphics, if for no other reason than it's fairly clear whether or not you're getting it right. I mean, we all know what the world looks like, and if we can make a picture that is indistinguishable from perhaps a photograph of a real object in the real world, then we can be fairly sure that the programs that we're writing to simulate reality.
People want real, believable teapots, or believably looking teapots, but that have character as well. And that, in the past, they've had to make do with Claymore or traditional animation, and that all has its own look, and people will accept it for being a teapot. But if they see one on a table and it doesn't do anything, they'll know it's plasticine, or they'll know it's character. It's, you know, traditional animation. And the beauty with the computer-generated and animated teapot is you don't know until it starts to move.
For those who like their tea to taste like tea, finding the word decaffeinated might be somewhat disconcerting. But when you gently decaffeinate your tea within hours of picking it, then getting a modern cup of tea to taste like a proper one...
Ooh, look, silly. Lions.
Well, it isn't hard to swallow at all. Lions decaffeinated tea. Keep the flavor, keep the taste.
A lot of people didn't think you could get that realism into an object and at the same time have it animated on a computer. So it's sort of, and we also did it in a small, you know, department. It was a two-man department at the time. So we proved that you could get realistic animation and you could do it for a price.
And the cost of the stuff is come down to a level where you can actually use it for, you know, regular programming rather than just for expensive commercials or single title sequences.
Julie?
You bastard. What are you trying to do to me?
Look, it's over. I'll finish with her. It's you I love, Julie. I love you.
See? What more excuse do you need?
Stop playing with me.
He's been cheating on you. Leave him, Julie. Save yourself. Take Laura and leave. All it takes is guts. A bit of independence. You can be independent, can't you?
I don't know.
Strong. Come on. Let me take you out of this chaos.
Leave me alone.
Don't be silly, Julie. It's not me, Julie.
Get out of my life!
Another area that I'm sort of particularly excited by is the same sort of simulation, but it's actually simulation of the processes in see it in the world. Things like gravity, inertia, that sort of thing. And what it involves there is deriving mathematics that allow the animation to follow natural laws, which you can then change. Reverse gravity, make friction negative, that sort of thing.
One slightly controversial aspect to the work is that when I set up the rules in my computer world, it's a little bit like playing at God. I can say, let there be light, let there be texture, let there be gravity, let things float in a certain way. I can apply whichever physical laws that I wish. And so really at that phase in my little computer world, it's a bit like being God, and I create an artistic world to match my aesthetic decisions.
My eventual aim is to try and get objects which can move around in water. So like you can have a boat moving through water, or you can have, I don't know, or you could have, say, someone pouring stuff into a cup of water, and then that cup of water bursts out and does something completely manic. I try and set it up the night before. I'd sort of vaguely tell it what I want it to do, like have raindrops falling in, or have an object moving through water, or something like that. And I go away and leave it, and leave it running overnight. And occasionally, it decides to do something different. Even though I always sort of think it's like a living animal where it sort of just does its own thing.
It has atmosphere. And I think that is something which is often lacking in computer graphics. But in Dinosaur, it's there. There's an atmosphere. You know that you're actually looking into an imaginary world, a lost world. You know that you're seeing something which is impossible.
In my work, there is an irony, the fact that I'm using highly advanced technology, which is kind of perfect and geometrical, to make forms that look extremely organic, perhaps sometimes a little bit disturbing or nightmarish. And in many ways, the forms sometimes look very ancient, as though they came from prehistoric times. So that in my work, I'm setting up this tension between the modern and the ancient. techniques that I'm using are sometimes used in films, such as the Terminator film. But what I have developed is a unique software base, which is very, very different to the techniques being used generally in advertising.
And it just goes back to, you know, patronage, really. I mean, good artists get commissions to do work. You know, it just happens that, you know, in the 1990s, they happened to be commissioned to do commercials rather than frescoes. We've just finished a job for Volvo, which involves using both traditional 2D metamorphosis or morphs. The third sequence that we did on this commercial involves morphs at the beginning and end of a three-dimensional metamorphosis, where we have a car turn into a horse with a rider through a liquid metal stage, a bit like Terminator.
You know, I love the idea of building an animation you can ride around in. Surrounding you. It sort of ties in with the virtual reality bit that's on everyone's lips at the moment. It amounts to the same thing, but what you're doing is creating environmental illusions rather than illusions that take place on the screen in front of you. Then you see American amusement parks have an awful lot of these things, and a lot of them have a substantial computer graphic component to them.
Find the magic never ends.
The idea of the Seven Wonders is a fun thing. I mean, everyone's interested in them. Everybody knows 6. And it was just the sort of project you look at and say, this is wonderful. I mean, we really could go mad here and create things that you don't normally get a chance to do, particularly at this end of the industry. It's, you know, thereby build the image of the company that's paying for it, you know, to a level that, you know, the whole idea was just to make people go, gosh.
The lighthouse at Alexandria is a good example of product development. By pioneering the strategic placement of mirrors, the architect not only designed a beautiful building, but constructed a lighthouse visible at night from 40 miles out at sea. The year 270 BC.
Basically, people need money, so they go and work in a commercial environment, but they are very interested in their own work and they are artists in their own right. So that crossover happens.
The equipment, as I say, being used all the time for commercial reasons. And in downtime, you can get access to the equipment, and it's what you can do in the downtime. I mean, in, let's see, 3.5 years in computer graphics, I've managed to do one piece, which is what, 27 seconds long, or something quite ridiculous.
Many people use computer graphics not because they want to animate, but because they see through that screen a world, their own world. It's a world in which they are in charge. They can make the rules. With shades of the Book of Genesis hovering around me, I fill that void with my imagination. It's like Alice through the looking glass.
The last of Channel 4's Secret Passions is at 9:30 tonight, when you can see 3 masterpieces by young British directors. And Formations UK continues next with 3 animations with messages: Sideshow, Face Facts, and first of all, Rain Dance, after the break.